Hi. Hi, today I'm going to show you how you can use Visual Studio Team System to manage your project, the requirements, the schedule, the resources, and the process to deliver on your business value. So let me give you a brief tour. First, I want to start a new project. In the past, starting a new project meant I had to go configure a lot of different tools, set up a project website, collect all my spec templates, and a lot of information, and collect all this information together to start my project. Now with Visual Studio Team System, I can run a wizard that will do this for me. I create a project, and I can choose what process I'd like my team to use in running this project. Microsoft has two different processes available with Visual Studio Team System, and I can change those to work to tune for the needs of my IT organization, or I can create my own if I'd like. In this case, I'm going to create my own. I can also set up a project portal, and a lot of the information that my project process enabled is posted now to my project site. Things like spec templates, stock reports that I think are important to monitor, and interesting information about the project. With Visual Studio Team System, I also have source code control, and my new project enables me to branch my source code tree right from within this simple wizard. Once I've created a project, I can browse all this project information within Visual Studio in the Portfolio Explorer. I can see my work item queries, so I can query the work item database right from Visual Studio. I can look at those stock reports that came with my process choice, and I can view documents. Right now there's just templates up there, and I can look at build information. So when my team uses Visual Studio, they can have all the project information readily available to them. But if you don't have Visual Studio installed, we also post all the same information to a project website. We have the same document folders and documents, and we have lots of reports and queries and metrics available out on our project portal. This makes sure that stakeholders and other people without Visual Studio installed can navigate the same project artifacts. If I make a change to a folder structure or add a new document on my portal, that change is also reflected in Visual Studio and vice versa. So no matter which path people choose to navigate the project information, I can be assured that all the information they see is up to date. One of the first things I do when I create a project is I create a checklist of the critical work that I think needs to be done in order to exit the given phase. Since I've just started this project, I'm looking at requirements and architecture and documenting our business case. With Visual Studio Team System, I get this checklist for free. I like to manage my list in Excel, and from here I can make work assignments, set priorities, use Excel to chart progress and formatting, and I can look at relevant reports or specification templates or documents and attach those things right inside Excel. In the past, when I created a spreadsheet, I'd then have to go through and ask people to update it, and they would mess it up by adding different information or not following the data validation rules that are available, or I'd have to set this all up myself. With Visual Studio Team System, these rules are enforced at a very deep level. So not only can I enforce data validation automatically without a lot of work on my plate, but I can set more advanced rules, such as when you resolve something, you need to give a reason. When I try to publish something without giving a reason, I get a dialog enforcing my data validation rules. And all of this is enforced not just within the Excel environment, but also within Visual Studio and anywhere else where I reference the same work item. So I can make sure that the same data is presented no matter what application people use. And I didn't have to learn anything new or do a lot of work in order to set up those rules, or I didn't have to learn a new project management tool. I just used Excel, the environment that I use today, to manage my work. So let's look at those design requirements. I store my requirements also in Excel spreadsheet. And this one is a little different because I like to not just look at my requirements and manage them as a list, but I like to look at how they break down into tasks. That way when tasks make progress, I can see how my requirements progress throughout the project. So the way I set this up is I just used Excel to add new requirements. For example, shipping options. And I can use their formatting to make it look exactly the way I want to. I can insert several, so I just created a new requirement right from within Excel. I didn't have to go to the work item database, it just did it in the tool that is comfortable for me. So I'm going to break down that requirement into two work items. Shipping options means I need to have a UI for the shipping options. That's a task. And I also want to make sure that I do some shipping calculations. When I publish this information, a new work item is created for each of the rows in my spreadsheet, and it's pushed right into people's work item queues. And so now when they provide updates, I can see my requirements progress. So I've got a good list of requirement breakdown. The next thing I'd like to do is schedule work on my team. I like to use Microsoft Project to do that. Let me go pull it up. I've started a project plan here, but I don't schedule things according to requirement. I like to look at it according to the component teams who are working on the project. In the past, I'd have to copy and paste those tasks I just added to my spreadsheet to make sure my project plan was in sync with my spreadsheet. With Visual Studio Team System, I can do a quick query on the work item database, and I get all the information. I can see the last two tasks I just created right in this query, and I can insert them directly into my project plan. There they are at the bottom. Then I have the flexibility to use Project the way I normally do, and I can add the shipping calculations into the Web Component Integration team, and I can add the UI into my UI component. I can make assignments from within Excel, I can change dates, and I can publish this information into. In the past, when I made those same rule violations that I showed in Excel are enforced also in Microsoft Project. So when I make a change, I have to submit all the same information, so I retain the data integrity no matter which application I'm using to view the data. So I just created two new tasks in order to create my development schedule. In the past, I would publish this project plan and I would have to point everyone to it, or cut and paste all the different tasks and tell people about the latest information that's available. And I would have to copy and paste each and every task and tell them about it. Now with Visual Studio Team System, these are all pushed into the work item queues. Let me show you. So I just created a new work item in Project, the UI for shipping options. I can assign that to Eric Lee, publish that to the work item database, and then I can go into the development environment and look at Eric's work. This runs a query on the work item database, and I can see the UI for the shipping options. Let's rerun that query. Let's try that again. Let's go to Microsoft Project. The UI for shipping options I assigned to Eric Lee. I sync that with the work item database. And then I simply sync that to the work item database, and I can see the updates within Visual Studio. There it is. So as a developer, Eric doesn't have to leave Visual Studio in order to get his work. And if I assign something really high priority, he can go and prioritize his work accordingly. And he can resolve his work right from within Visual Studio. So we didn't have to look at the project plan, and I didn't have to go copy and paste a bunch of information and send it to him. Unfortunately, at this point, now my project plan is out of date. In the past, I'd spend my whole project cycle trying to keep that project plan up to date. I would schedule status meetings, I'd run around and try to get people to send me status reports, and it was all just a big waste of time. I'd usually just end up regenerating my entire project plan. With Visual Studio Team System, I just hit the refresh button and I get all the latest changes right within my project plan. So now my developer can work where he's most productive, and I can work and see progress. Let's look at my requirements. So the UI for shipping options has made some progress. I can go to Excel, and I can do a refresh here too, and I can see that those same results updated here. So I can see progress by component in my development schedule, and I can see progress by requirement here in this spreadsheet. I use the tools and the views that I want in order to see how work is progressing. So it looks like things are going pretty good here. But now I want to look at the entire project. I want to look at the big picture on what's going on with the project. So let me do just that and pull up my project portal, which is right here. This is the same portal I showed you earlier with all the documents stored here, and we have a handbook of process guidance and the reports and some information resources that I can pull down and customize headlines that I find are interesting to me or to my team. I used to only have bug data available to me, and I managed my project based on bug counts. But now, look at all this data I get with Visual Studio Team System. I can tell if the project is progressing on time, whether, how high a quality the product is, what my bug fixes are doing, how productive the team is. I can see if the requirements are churning underneath, all of this data. And I didn't have to run around and collect it myself. I didn't have to copy and paste it from a bunch of different sources. All these reports came right with Visual Studio Team System. And my team didn't have to go out of their way to provide me with this data. All of this data was captured through the natural course of their work using Visual Studio Team System. And I know these projects make me a better project manager because they're based on Microsoft proven practices. In fact, I can see here that my test effectiveness isn't very high. I would expect this to just get better and better as the project progresses, and it looks like it's tailed off. Let me go drill into that. I can look at a historical trend and then drill into it by component. Before, if I looked at a component and I saw they had a really low bug count, I'd be pretty happy and say it's ready to go. Now with test data also, I have additional information that tells me, hey, a low bug count, but the tests aren't passing. That's not so good. But with a low bug count and a lot of tests passing, I'd say, hey, these guys are doing really well. But look, their tests aren't covering much of their code, if any. That means I've got a lot of empty tests here, and I'm getting false results. So this data allows me to drill in and actually look at the test and course correct the problem exactly down to who I need to help me work on solving it. So with all this data, I can be a better project manager. I no longer have to spend my time collecting the metrics, but I can course correct the project. And I can do it in tools I'm very comfortable with. In fact, I'm using all these tools today. And I don't have to call status reports or a lot of meetings to get the information I need. It's all captured through my team using Visual Studio Team System.